Hi, today I'll be talking about the Understanding Business Environment Assessment Task 3. So, question number 1, imposition of consumption taxes. So, the demand curve is labeled as D and it represents consumers. Supply curve is labeled as S, representing producers. The new price equilibrium point, which is point A, is after the imposition of a consumption tax and is higher than the initial equilibrium price of point B. Consumer surplus is labeled as CS, producer surplus is labeled as PS, and the deadweight loss is shaded. So, consumption taxes are a way for the government to generate tax revenue. So, after the imposition of a consumption tax, consumers are generally worse off. The tax increases the price they pay for the product, reducing their consumer surplus. And the producers are also negatively affected by consumption taxes. Although they receive a higher price for their products, they must also pay taxes on their sales. This reduces their producer surplus. For deadweight loss, one of the critical impacts of consumption taxes is the creation of deadweight loss. Deadweight loss is the area where transactions that would have occurred in the absence of the tax do not happen. It represents loss in economic welfare and inefficiency in the market. So to summarize this, consumption taxes generate tax revenue for the government but generally make consumers and producers worse off. The presence of a deadweight loss indicates the resources are not allocated efficiently due to the tax. Thank you. Question number 2, imposition of a tariff. The demand curve is represented by D, which means domestic consumers. The supply curve is represented by S, which means domestic producers. SFT means supply foreign trade. And the government tariff revenue is represented by a DFG rectangle in the middle, and the deadweight loss is represented by the two shaded triangles, which is the triangle BDE and the triangle CFG. So, in this slide, we'll illustrate the impact of import tariffs on the market using a demand and supply diagram. So, when tariffs are imposed, society experiences a loss in the form of deadweight loss. Deadweight loss represents the inefficiency in the market due to the tax. Consumers are generally worse off with tariffs. The higher price caused by tariffs reduces consumer surplus. On the other hand, domestic producers benefit from tariffs. They can only sell their products at a higher price, increasing their producer surplus. Foreign producers, however, are worse off after the imposition of tariffs. Tariffs reduce imports, causing foreign producers to export fewer goods. The government gains tariff revenue from the taxes imposed on imports. So, if you were to compare to the previous question, in question 1 we discussed consumption taxes that affected both consumers and producers within the domestic market. In this question, however, we introduced tariffs that specifically impact imports and foreign producers. The key difference lies in the focus of the tax, with tariffs targeting international trade. Thank you. Question number 3, imposition of consumption taxes. In this slide, we will explore how consumption taxes impact the macroeconomy using the aggregate demand and aggregate supply model. So, initially the macro equilibrium is at A, point A. At this point, output is at full employment level Y1 and the price level is P1. After the imposition of consumption taxes, disposable income falls. In the short term, consumers reduce the consumption of goods and services. This leads to a leftward shift of the aggregate demand curve from AD1 to AD2. As a result, the macroeconomic equilibrium moves from point A to point B. At point B, output falls from Y1 to Y2, indicating an economic recession. Unemployment tends to rise during such periods. However, there is an interesting effect on the price level. The price level falls from P1 to P2. So, to sum up, consumption taxes impact macroeconomy by reducing consumer spending, leading to recession with lower output, Y2, and somewhat counterintuitively, a lower price level, P2. Thank you. So question number 4, long run effect of an imposition of consumption taxes. So in this slide, we use an ADAS model to analyze the potential long-term benefits of a tax aimed at improving people's health. So in the short term, wages often remain fixed due to the sticky wage model. Negotiating higher wages takes time for workers, and this suggests that as real wages rise, firms' production costs also increase. As a result, we observe a leftward shift of the short-run aggregate supply curve, which is the SRAS1 to SRAS2. In the long term, workers persistently negotiate for higher wages to counter the impact of permanent consumption taxes, which further raises production costs. This results in a leftward shift of the long-run aggregate supply curve, which is LRAS1 to LRAS2. The macroeconomic equilibrium moves from point B to point C in the long run. In the long term, the output remains constant at Y2. However, the price level increases from P2 to P3. So in conclusion, considering the long-term perspective, there appear to be no significant potential benefits from the health improving tax, and output remains constant while the price level rises, suggesting that this tax may not lead to economic growth or improve economic well-being over the long term. Thank you. So question number 5, last question. In this slide, we'll explore how DAGS is a powerful tool in understanding the complex relationships between variables when assessing the health and economic consequences of a fat tax using empirical econometric models. The first step is to identify the primary variables in our analysis, including fat tax, health outcomes, and economic growth. Next, we need to determine how these variables interact causally. For instance, we hypothesize that the fat tax directly affects health outcomes and indirectly influences economic growth through its impact on health. We represent these causal relationships visually in the DAG. Using arrows, we connect fat tax to health outcomes to show the direct effect and connect health outcomes to economic growth to demonstrate the indirect effect. It is essential to account for potential confounding variables that could impact both the fat tax and our outcomes of interest. These variables are included in the DAG connected to the relevant nodes with arrows. By analyzing the DAG, we gain insights into how to structure our econometric models. It guides us in selecting control variables and mediators, helping us specify an appropriate model. With the DAG as our roadmap, we proceed to estimate the econometric model using statistical techniques like regression. The model will consider the causal relationships identified in the DAG and control for confounding variables. So, in conclusion, DAGS provides a clear visual representation of the causal links between variables and serve as a valuable guide for building empirical econometric models. This approach enables us to identify key variables, account for confounding vectors, and assess the health and economic consequences of a fat tax accurately. Thank you so much. That is all.